I've discovered this to someone that I was working with, is to probably have an accountant. So you don't have to do the asking, right? The accountant can do it for you. They can follow
And if you
up.
can't afford an accountant, just get a friend to pretend. Today, we are at Shivani Dogra's beautiful studio in Goa. Having had no formal education in design, she has made her foray into the industry slowly and organically. As one of the most sought after designers today, with a decade in the business, we sat down with her to understand what does it take to be a woman in this industry. So Shivani, before we start, let's tell our audiences why we decided to have this conversation. We met for lunch last week and we were talking about everything, life, work, food, health, and suddenly we found ourselves talking about finances and investments and how important it is for women to be financially secure. And I think that's when we decided that why don't we broaden the scope of the conversation and really get into the nitty-gritties of starting a design business, which can help young women who are deciding to get into this business, how to, approach this, because this is the kind of information you don't really find online, do you? So why in this country is there a need to have a conversation about women in design?
I believe it's important to have a conversation about women in design in India, because what women don't realize when they're getting into the field of design, that although it's a female-oriented career path to take, there's a big difference between a man getting into design and a woman getting into design. And that's because men have for generations had other men working, contractors and other men are used to having orders given to them by men and not by women. And we are, I think, the first generation of women that is getting into the workforce. A few of our mothers worked, but not by and large, a lot of them were homemakers. So we're still negotiating that new territory of how to deal with men who've worked for generations on the field in architecture and in interior design.
So how did your family react when you told them that you want to be an interior designer?
So my parents really never had too strong a reaction to me wanting to be an interior designer. My father had long given up on me being a bureaucrat or a lawyer or a doctor like he wanted me to be. Basically after college, he left it to me. He said, you do what you want to do, but make some money, right? So I think he wanted me to be a little secure. My mother just wanted me to do something that would make me happy.
So instead of working with someone else first, how did you decide to, or why did you decide to start your own design firm?
It came sort of naturally to me. I didn't think that process out through too deeply, and that's because I grew up around design. Our houses were always beautifully kept because my mother was so into it. They were impeccable, right? I mean, it was annoying for us growing up as children, but she kept a beautiful house. She told me how to do things, and so I sort of picked it up at home. And when I did decide to do this on my own, I didn't really consider working under someone. In retrospect, it would have probably been good for me to get some insight into how to do the finances, but that was a lot of common sense, which I learned later on.
So you didn't have a degree in design or any experience. How did you take your first steps into the business?
My foray into the design world was organic. I didn't really set out to make a lot of money. I just wanted to do something that I loved, and I loved old houses, and I figured, I'm going to start somewhere and learn along the way. And so I had rented, a little studio, which I had done up. That got featured in a magazine. I advertised that on a group, like it's an expat group in Delhi called Uninet. And I said, I've done this. If anyone wants me to do, I need to do 2 rooms. I'm happy to do them. 2 people got back to me, and I tried my hand at interior design, like working with interior design, because doing my own space is very different from doing it for someone else. I did the 2 rooms. I figured that, a lot of it is common sense and, how you get things together. I didn't really think about working with anyone too deeply because I sort of figured I knew the rope. I had done my own little studio in Delhi, which gave me a little more confidence as to how to, go about things. And So
what about the technical aspects of it, knowing a particular software or just?
I figured early in the job that I didn't really need to know everything about it, right? I could always delegate work. If I don't like a certain aspect of accounts, I figured I could hire someone who knew it better than me. And people are so good with CAD and things like that. And so I've always hired people to do that for me. I do regret not learning to pick up the actual freehand sketching. And I'm still trying to learn that because I do enjoy, sort of crafting interiors.
So why don't you now take us through the nitty-gritty of setting up a design business, like everything that goes behind it from day one, once you've decided to do it?
Right. So when I started my interior design business, I started organically. Like I said, I didn't think of it as a business. I just, I was doing my own thing. I had no one to advise me then. Right now, we're starting to sell products online under the brand name Iduki. What I figured is that you have to first decide a name for your business. And when I was starting my interior design business, somebody who was doing my website at that point advised me to just go by my name because it was authentic. And there wasn't a domain booked in shivanidogra.in or .com, and so that's what I went with. That's one of the first things you should do. The second thing, well, actually in many people's books, the first thing you should do is to figure out what sort of business entity you want to be. So I started out as a sole proprietorship, and then I went into an LLP, a limited liability partnership. So you have to figure that out, and then you've got to trademark your name. So we chose the name, and then we registered the name. We trademarked it, and then I applied for an import-export license because that's important. We intend to sell abroad. And then we looked at all the social media channels that we'd liked to be on. And so the top 3 things you should do is 1, register your domain. Figure out you've got to be online, right? So start a website, figure out a name for your business, what sort of business entity you want to be, and trademarks, right? And any licenses that you should get in order to do your trade.
Have you got any clients through social media so far?
We have. Instagram has really helped. I didn't think it would, but I have got clients who've expressed interest through seeing pictures on Instagram. The blog seems to work really well for us because it helps websites for SEO, and it's helped my interior design business because sometimes people get to us because of a certain blog post that I've written about. Also, for the new business that we're doing, we were advised by someone, by the web developer, that it was essential to do a blog post a week, just for SEO. Mm-hmm. So people, your website comes up higher on the Google searches when people are searching for, say, home design products or whatever it is you're selling.
Okay, now let's talk about the unmentionable, finances.
Yeah.
Women are generally a little shy about bringing up money and negotiating rates. Mm-hmm. So how did you overcome that, and how do you talk to clients about your rates?
I haven't ever been shy about asking for money or for, presenting my rates, because I believe if you've got a product to sell or you've got a service to give, you should have a fair exchange. What I think works perfectly for me is the contract. A good legal contract helps you get your money when it's due to you, right? And so you don't really have to do the talking. When it came to money, I had bills to pay, right? Yeah. There's no way I was going to be shy about it. So I would always ask, after a certain section of work was done, I would ask for what I was due.
Do you have any tips or, tips for anybody who is shy about this? Like, how do you get over that fear?
See, so one way to do it is to probably have an accountant. So you don't have to do the asking, right? The accountant can do it for you. They can follow up.
And if you can't afford an accountant, just get a friend to pretend.
You could do that.
Yeah.
Or there are fantastic templates online as to how, just really professional templates on how you can sort of remind your clients for updates. Okay. There are apps that do that for you. Like you can just send out emails, email reminders to clients when payments are due. So when clients ask me for my rates, we have a standard rate sheet that we give clients. And I do keep a little bit of room for negotiation for Indian clients, whereas the expats don't tend to bargain that much. I do understand it's part of our culture. And sometimes, clients see that they're getting value for what you're offering, and so they don't bargain as much. But if it goes below a certain range, then I'm unable to do projects because it doesn't really make financial sense for us to take on a project lower than a certain budget. So when I started, I struggled until I ordered this book. It's called The Interior Designer's Guide to Pricing, Estimating and Budgeting. It was very well recommended to me. I had someone bring it to me from the US, and I sort of adapted this to working in Delhi because a lot of it is very topical to the American market. But there's just a lot of practical stuff here. Like she says, no matter how good you are at your job, no matter how much you enjoy it, which is what I was doing. I loved what I did, but I was burning out. And she said, you will burn out if you can't make the finances, if you're not clever about it. And so she shows you here how to write a contract. I took this as a format. I also took this as a format for rates, right? How to charge. Now, the Americans charge by the hour. That wasn't happening here. So when I started out, I asked an interior designer how she charged, and she said she's charged by the square foot. I never thought that was a fair way to charge, because sometimes you're just doing a lot more work on some projects than you are for the other. And I thought charging for your time is perfect. She also talks about how you answer clients who want a bigger discount. How do you deal with repeat clients? So this book, it was invaluable for me then. It still is now. I refer to it every time I'm in doubt about, either dealing with clients or how to write emails to clients that is sometimes a little difficult. I mean, you'd have to find the guide that's right for you. Mm-hmm. This was perfect for me at that point. And when I got into partnership with, say, architects or with someone else that was in business, I still felt like this worked better even within their setup. So they were doing things that they had learned from either, working with other architects senior to them. And then I figured what she had mentioned here was invaluable. It's sometimes they borrowed from here. So this book is a really good book to get. So we track our time on an app called Clockify. People across the office can download the app, and you just click on a start button when you start working and stop when you stop. And we send reports to clients every other week, so they know how much time we are spending on their project, and we charge accordingly.
So I remember I was interviewing a designer once, and she mentioned that whenever she went for site visits, if her husband happened to be with her, the contractors or the civil workers would actually make eye contact with him while speaking or address him instead of her, while actually she was the one doing the design. So as a woman, how has your experience been with interaction, with contractors and civil workers when you do your site visits?
I will agree with her. I mean, on projects that I worked alone on, they were receptive to me because there was no one else to take instructions from. But when I did have an architect working with me, I did find that they were more comfortable with him. But I didn't really feel bad about it. I just felt it was a sex thing. Like, females are more comfortable with women. They do, however, take instructions. And Indian women are very good at giving instructions. I'll just say that because, you're used to doing it at home. You've seen your mothers do it, so you know the way to do it, right? So you don't have to be harsh with them, but you can say it in a certain tone. And so I think I've learned well. Yeah.
Okay, so once you've done this enough, you can, be a little assertive and get them to take.
So the thing is, I'm not an aggressive personality. I have a softer personality, and I thought that played to my disadvantage. But then I discovered I did have traits in me that people who were loud didn't have. I could get work done in different ways, right? By being nice, but also by being firm. I did get my work done, so I didn't have to shout and scream. Although sometimes when things were a little tense, I did tend to lose my cool, but I don't very often get into that state.
How many offices do you have, and how many people do you have on your team, and how do you manage all of this?
We have 2 studios, one in Delhi and one in Goa. We have 2 people working for us in Goa and 3 in Delhi, and then we hire as and when we're doing projects, in different parts of the country.
How do you manage your team since you're not in any one particular place for a long period of time, and you have projects around the country?
Right. So lockdown taught me how to manage teams remotely, because prior to lockdown, I had one studio which was in Delhi. I'd get into office, people would be there, you'd be able to monitor their work. And once lockdown started, we still had work going on. And I trust my team. I've built a team around me that I can trust. And so we just do everything online now. It's through Zoom, or we do it on WhatsApp. And they're working from home now.
So you were telling me you have projects right now going on in Hyderabad, Bangalore, Gorakhpur, and even Goa. So how are you able to manage and execute projects in different parts of the country?
Well, not all projects are turnkey projects, which is that we're not handling everything end to end on all projects. A lot of them happen to be consultancies. So I only have to visit once in a while, or somebody from the team visits site once in a while. Everything nowadays is just done online. It's convenient. I do enjoy being at site, especially sites in Rajasthan. I like being there. But otherwise, it's pretty easy to handle.
But are there any challenges that you faced doing this?
Initially, when I was, the thing is, I do tend to get attached to projects. So I want to be there. And I just figured it, I spent a lot of energy doing that, and I was tired by the end of it. For instance, I was doing a project in Tamil Nadu, Valparai, when I first started. And I was hands-on because I didn't have a large team. I had one person working for me. I went to site and stayed there for 6 months. So initially I would just do that because I was starting out. I had to see the process. But now that I know the process, it's just easier for me to delegate work and, not be so stressed about it. But I do feel like the distance when I'm in Delhi and a project's happening in Tamil Nadu, I think this is a personality thing. I tend to get a little worried that I'm not there. I should, be able to handle it. But I think once you start trusting people to handle it for you, it's not that difficult.
So what differences have you seen in your interaction with clients, contractors, workers in different parts of the country?
There are cultural differences when you work in different parts of the country. For instance, temperaments in Delhi happen to be vastly different from those in Arunachal. And so you'd have to just adjust to different temperaments and different sort of people where you're working. And I've figured that it really helps to first observe for the first 2 weeks of working in a certain place, get the hang of how people react, how people want to be spoken to, and then deal with the project going forward.
One of the really important pieces of advice you gave in the beginning itself is to hire for your shortcomings. Mm-hmm. So if you're not good with finances, hire an accountant. Mm-hmm. But that, of course, comes later when you set up a business and you can afford to pay staff, right? Mm-hmm. So can you give me 3 pieces of advice for maybe young women who are looking to get into the business? What should they keep in mind?
I'd first say that you've really got to love what you're doing. You've got to have a passion for it. Otherwise, you're not going to be able to sustain your career through the hard times. That's the first piece of advice. The second piece of advice I'd give someone who was starting out is to say, get your finances in place, right? Either learn from someone else or read a book like I did. Have a contract. It's really essential to have a contract and to see that your client honors it and you honor the contract. The third piece of advice I'd give someone who's starting out is not to worry too much about where they're going to get their next client from, because in my case, I've discovered that word of mouth works brilliantly. You're also going to get the kind of clients you want if people are talking about you within their circles. So go a little easy on that.
Thank you so much, Shivani. I think we've managed to cover a range of topics, and I think hopefully this will be information that people can really use and use to sort of make decisions in their career that can help them and pass it on to people who are looking for this kind of information also. Before we go, Shivani, for women watching this, if they have any more questions for you, can they write to you separately?
Sure. My email address is care@shivanidogra.in.
Thank you so much, Shivani.
Thanks, Rachna. My pleasure.